That's it. We'll call to order. Just quick. We don't have minutes yet because Angela's been pretty busy. Very busy. That's okay. We understand. So it's fairly quick agenda at any rate. So personnel. We move on to the first issue. Well, I'll kind of lay it out. Like, personnel is the greatest cost we have in the town. We talked about it a little bit last year. It's 70+%. You know, and when you throw in the benefits, it's probably even higher. Salaries and wages and pensions. You know, basically what municipal government is because it's service intensive. So, you know, as we're thinking about it, I think it's just something that we should think about holistically in terms of the whole town. And when you talk about a personnel policy, there is a town personnel policy, but it applies to the non-union folks. Everything else is contained in the collective bargaining agreements. So, like, and what that says basically, you know, they've tried to mirror the town personnel policy over a lot of the collective bargaining agreements, so that it's a similar sort of, you know, interaction that people have with union and non-union people. You know, it's the same thing like arbitration, grievances, and things like that. I think fairly similar. And then, you know, in terms of who we employ, you know, pretty close to 700 people. Most of them school on the school side. So if we're thinking about this, we should think about both. We should think about the entire town as one entity. And then,
but what is our goal for doing this? Is the idea is understanding staffing in more detail as it pertains to the budget and the staffing costs, like
right.
role of part-time
How
versus
do
full-time.
our personnel policies and contracts support our fiscal goals? You know, so I guess, you know, in talking to Andrew about how positions get created, he said in general it's sort of there's no like formal sort of process. I would say like, oh, we need a position to do X, Y, or Z. It's kind of a year-to-year thing where they sometimes create new positions, sometimes, you know, reorganize whole departments. Like, he used the example, he used to have 2 admins, and he, you know, sort of got rid of one, or transferred one, and then, you know, increased the job scope a little bit and hired Laurie for his law firm. So it was just him going to the Board of Selectmen and saying, this is what we want to do. He said his department heads will come to him with similar things, and we think it's a good idea. They'll put it forward in the next budget. And so we hear a little bit of that year over year when they say, this is a new position, or this is, you know, or this department's down a position. We've seen a lot of moving around with that. So from a public policy perspective, that's how we create new positions. They don't have, he said, relatively agnostic on full or part-time. Most of the part-timers, he said, are employed in the library. There are some other part-time positions, but most are in the library. And if the part-time positions are managed in such a way, whether they're union or non-union, to be fewer than 18.5 hours if you really want to be conservative, or 20 hours is what the state law says, but he said they usually try to stick to 18.5, and they're not entitled to the health care, you know, or the pension obligations, you know, which require vesting and all that, 10 years. So that's kind of the grand scope of how they create positions and whether they were full or part-time.
So we have to come up with questions?
Well, what I'm saying is, like, let's figure out what we want to.
And we have to figure out what we're going to ask.
I think, you know, it actually sent me off on another whole series of thoughts that are somewhat similar to what we did last year. Like, I don't think we're going to get any answers that are going to really talk about things that are going to move numbers one way or the other. You know, like the number one thing we can do through the budgeting process is say like, why are you creating this position? Or can you do this job, can you perform these functions with fewer positions, right? Like those are the two questions that we would always ask, right? Like we should be asking all the time, like, what are we doing more efficiently because, you know, we're more efficient. And I think we've asked it like on the finance side, when they've said, you know, for example, they merged the town AP departments. So said like,
I get the sense that, first of all, big picture, yeah, it is the biggest cost in the books. Second big picture is we go to town meeting, or before town meeting, we look into the budget, and they say, as we know from this last go-around, headcounts are kind of stagnant. But I do like the fact, you know, I come from a world of mergers and acquisitions where synergy, which is a nice word for cutting back in the accounting department when you got two of them, is a smart thing to do in order to make sure you achieve the shareholder, the stakeholders' best interest in returning their money. In this town, they are doing the right things, the smart things to combine in the AP. But I got the sense, though, that they haven't lost the headcount.
Yeah,
Part of me too says, we're not gonna be out there to make profit in this town by synergies. But at the very least, if you're gonna do synergies and save some money, put that money towards its different focus that we really want to invest in, whether it be, in my way of thinking, maybe the superintendent's goal, you know, that she's got, Dr. Price's goal, and something to that effect, as opposed to just shifting it around. That's really where, you know, if you're gonna do synergy, if you're going to reduce headcount in particular departments because it makes sense, then what are you gonna do with that resource?
How about I rephrase what I think you just said in a form of a question, and you can tell me if it sounds appropriate?
Okay.
What has been the year-to-year trend of headcount for town employees and school employees? Posed as a question, so maybe the last 5 years, year to year?
well, we have that. That's in the budget book.
It'd be nice to have it consolidated though, but, yeah.
Okay, so we don't have to ask it, well, let's find it before the meeting. What do you expect with staff count from combining things like many town employees into one town hall location? What do you expect from the school putting in the HR, what's going in? There's a head of HR or something going in, right? Wasn't she?
yeah, she's already.
Yeah, there was the principal moved to head of HR or something? From putting a head of HR position into
Just be Dr. Scuzzo's.
play?
Yeah.
You could be, I could be totally off, I'm just trying to get it.
No, it's fine, but here's, I mean, that's an interesting one, because that was a heavy, that's, Dr. Price has got the goal of trying to positively grow the school, and HR is a critical thing.
With the protocol.
With the protocol.
Absolutely.
But
No, yeah.
one of the questions I would like you to put down, if you're listing among questions here, is what have been the steps taken to combine functions to reduce the headcount for that function?
School functions, town, or both, or municipal?
Both. Oh, because, you know, AP was a school and town combined. And what have you done with that available resource? Where we spent those available dollars that was resulted from that combination? I'll stay away from the word synergy. I mean, what happened to it? And if so, and again, without getting into a lot of investigation, I think the year-over-year headcounts have been stagnant, which means the synergies has just gone back into hiring a replacement head somewhere else.
Right.
What is AP, by the way?
I'm sorry?
What is AP?
Accounts payable.
Accounts payable.
Okay, sorry, okay.
And the AR is accounts receivable.
Thank
He
you.
always uses jargon, thank you for asking.
Some of those accountants and being counters there.
I have another question, maybe I
What?
don't know.
Am I in the wrong book?
No, the position list is in every year. I don't think the schools is in. but-
120, page 122 if you would like.
Thank you.
I have a thought.
And then actually each department budget has a headcount over if you individually too.
Again, I have a thought and I don't know how it is going to fit in, whether it is the right time, but what about utilizing the kids enrolled in high school or in the local community colleges and having them intern or include their curriculum as as part of training into the schools. That way we
Yeah, so-
reduce.
I mean, I know exactly where you're going, that we'd be able to have people come in, and so, like, that's, like, first of all, there are very stringent regulations over who could be teaching children in terms of your licensure. So that's the number one.
Library, if a lot of people, most of these part-timers in the library, then we can at least use them there. They will be trained and
Oh,
they
sure,
will get the
they're-
resources.
Things like that, yeah, there are plenty of volunteers in town. There are plenty of people who do volunteer in the library. And so, we could, that's a good question for the library's presentation to, what's your utilization of volunteer labor?
And it will be a twofold thing, where kids, our local kids, can be ready to take up a job after they finish this, job training internship, whereas we will get the resources for free.
Well, there's legal, I think we'd have to navigate the legal.
Yes,
aspect
exactly,
of
yeah,
that
I mean-
too, though, cause there's specific, if it's, an internship, it has to be a paid internship unless there's certain ways to do it.
There are
with-
certain ways where it counts as part of the course.
Yep, and you have to
Right.
have a specific program
Yes,
put in
exactly.
place, and you have to have review, and you have to
Yes.
submit
Yeah.
paperwork, and
Yes,
so that's
yes,
just a whole
absolutely.
different
Yes.
process.
Right.
Yes.
But
We
here's
also-
the thing, those are ideas.
Yes,
And
ideas.
recommendations, we still have to get the data of where we are and look at it from a financial standpoint.
That's
So
why I was saying that,
Yeah.
how do we fit this in?
we don't make recommendations
Yeah.
into this meeting, I don't believe. We're gonna ask questions as it relates to finance and budget and looking forward, not any recommendations, because I get in trouble doing that. And I think that's not our place right now.
But just for sake of your discussions, there's nothing wrong with planting seeds. They're not recommendations, but there's nothing
Yes.
wrong with planting seeds.
But not in this next meeting. Do you think?
No, I mean, it's, if the
Unless you
opportunity
feel
is
you have
there,
enough data, yeah.
if the opportunity's there, you always plant seeds.
So-
Yeah, it's-
You veer off it as fast as you can, but.
So, two things, kind of going back to the first thing Bill said, I think to me, the purpose of this is to have the transparency of discussion. We've never had this discussion, as far as I know, really looking at how employment impacts the overall future of finance of this town. We've talked about that, we started talking about that last year, when you hire somebody, you've got this retirement piece and so forth. So I think that's part of it here, which is to reinforce that as the FinCom, we're gonna be looking at that, and we hope that the town manager encourages that. That it's not just, I've got this position created and I need this person today. Recognize there's a legacy with that, right? So, and kind of have that consistent. But I also think that, as quickly just glancing through this, so this year, you've got two departments that in essence lose positions, but you have 2, 4, 6, you have 7 departments that add positions or time in some way. So I think it's that dynamic that we want to also kind of tease out of this a little bit, right? So if you have 7 departments that gain incremental people, you know, what are we saying to the town? I mean, the town, people can look at this and go, okay, we added 2 more folks and our budget went up so much. It's not full-time people. We're impacting 9 departments, really. So again, I think part of this is being in a position to say, when we look at the budget, it's not just one person that comes aboard. It's impacting all these, all these pieces. And that's why making sure the policies are consistent and encouraging that and having an HR person. So I think it's more kind of reinforcing it and making sure that when somebody asks that question at town meeting, right?
Well, and then the other part of it is too, I mean, these collective bargaining units, they own the position, I mean, really, they sort of own the positions. The positions are defined in the collective bargaining agreements. So it should be a strategic, that you have a chief, or you have that you have this many sergeants and this many, those are all sort of negotiated out in the thing. So a lot of this, and that's 70% of the people that we're talking about. So you don't have quite the flexibility. You have, some flexibility, and you have flexibility if you negotiate it, but a lot of it is, you can't, in a collective bargaining agreement, you can't do that. You can't just be like, you know, we don't have any more, like, let's just say you were the tree climber and we cut down all the trees in town, and then we said like, sorry, Chris, you know,
No more work.
no more work, no more work for you. And if it was in the middle of your contract, you know, you're still the, you know, you're still inside of the position. I can't say, oh no, now I'm gonna, I'm a ditch digger, you know, like, so there's a lot of,
Yeah.
there's not a lot of flexibility, but it requires a lot of, I think the point that to pick up on is, there's also a lot that you have to be thinking about every time you have one of these positions, because you're gonna have to go talk to the head, to the union, and that becomes part of your negotiation to say, we wanna change positions.
I would like to understand too, how we stack up against neighboring towns in terms of how we attract talent, how we keep it. So if we are gonna be adding positions, are we adding the right people to those positions, and how are we doing it? So, like you said, it's difficult to now remove certain positions. We have a collective bargaining agreement with unions. So how do we make sure we're attracting the best talent to those positions we've already established, so we're getting the most for our dollar? Especially this being the public sector, not the private sector.
That's a great, you know, as a matter of fact, that's something that the HR director, you know, might want to address for us. It's sort of like, tell us about how you attract talent to this town. It's no different than a community development. I mean, really, it's the personnel side of community development, right? If the community development director come in here and say, this is how we're marketing to try and draw businesses, I think that's an awesome point. I think that's a really good thing to do. Tell us about it.
Great.
So I'm gonna go back and reiterate something a little more clear. We have, we've seen the push from the school department to grow. And it's awfully hard when you got X amount of revenue. And I've seen Andrew be real smart about things, including the combination of AP. But what is the end goal? I mean, is there a goal that we should be focusing on in a synergistic kind of way? We're gonna go and combine functions. And with that available resource, we're going to use that towards increasing what the school department needs to make it more of a first-class system. And do we have that as does anyone see that as a way of getting there? Because it is all about labor cost. And if you can push more labor costs in the school by being smart within the rest of the organizations, rest of the operations.
I lost you there.
In other words, if you can have a synergy, you're gonna save 2 AP, or cut an AP head because you only need 1 now,
Right,
put that position to the school department.
right. And I think that's actually.
Well, that's what you.
That's
that's
actually
true.
how that's kind of how it worked,
Okay.
so.
It's
that
the
was
question of
part
where
the
we
saving.
spent the newfound dollars that came
Yeah.
from combinations and
Yeah.
adhesion,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
of functions.
Yeah.
So you're asked, yeah.
So I
that's-
remember that in Jim Mealy's presentation last year. A new initiative was, and I don't know if it was a head or a program or something like that, but he definitely accounted for that and said we used to have an AP clerk. And now, you know, and as should be noted, what a lot of the shared services has done for the schools department by putting more facilities people, more IT people under the towns.
Yep. Which is
Thing.
extremely smart.
It's allowed the schools to spend, you know, in essence, it is a little bit of a tipping of the scale from town to school.
What
municipal
are our
to school.
shared services right now? So IT is shared?
IT,
Counting, right?
facilities, although it has a very small headcount, so there's still, the custodians are still accounted for in the school budget, and they kind of have to be. But,
What about, not human resources, right? So we have.
no, we have
That's
two
not-
different human
Yeah.
resource
That's not.
departments.
I would, can I say the library, now that they're sharing at least one staff person between the library and the schools, that's not really.
So it's-
How does the Merrimack Valley Library Consortium fit into, do you guys know how that works?
That's just shipping the books. It's
That's all
not,
it
not
is.
personnel,
It's
it's
the
just shipping the
website and
books.
shipping.
Yeah, yeah. Right, but what you're saying, Thomas, is, you know, what are the actual areas where there's, yeah, it's really accounting,
Facilities.
facilities,
And
by
IT
and
definitely.
large, and IT.
That's it.
So which happened in the past, so they
Yeah.
combined these functions already, and
There's not
now
much
the
left.
question is
Well,
how
that's
much,
what I said, how much is left
did
to
you
do?
gain
Yeah,
Yeah.
and where did what you gain and where did it go? And the other thing though is that
Oh, but we
even
can
with-
ask Andrew to put it together and say, okay, you know,
I think
5 years,
speak to it.
10 years ago, we had all these IT guys and all these, and now look at what we have now, so.
Yeah.
Now, at least you can say the function got more productive, hopefully. And, you know, and then he will argue, you know, we use the productivity to add, you know, more resources somewhere else.
Well, then maybe the question is, what synergies, what across departments or among departments are possible that we haven't really talked about? I don't know.
Including the areas of school.
Well, that's what I'm saying, everything.
Your biggest
So
population.
here's how I ask that.
Yeah.
Is the initiative of combining continuing or completed?
Okay.
That's a
And,
good question, open-ended question.
and
Give
then.
them a chance to.
Yeah, and then the question, and then the other part is, you know, if you look at all these municipal departments and schools to it, if you could sort of, you know, turn the clock ahead, it automatically, where would you find?
I think that's a great, that's a
What else
great-
could you do?
What's your vision? What do you see? Where do you see it?
5 or 10 years from now,
Even the-
how would you do it?
Even, you know, I have Dr. Price and Andrew together as answering that question, and what a great, you know, yeah.
I don't know. They-
Yeah.
So
put it-
what is
put
the
on-
question? Say it again.
So the question is, if you could skip ahead 10 years from now, what efficiencies among or across departments would you want to have?
Yeah.
And so really talking about how, you know, how could
Yeah,
support
yeah.
one another, you know, whatever that is.
You know, automating the collection service, which I know people are doing, going closer and closer to online, you know, paying your penalties, paying your fines, paying your permits and the whatnot online.
Yeah, but I'm even saying, you know, is there, I'm even thinking about things, you know, just, you know, spitballing here, but, you know, what could you do with youth recreation and conservation or elder services? I don't know. Are there ways that you could kind of pull that together, or are they really siloed at this point? You can't. I don't know. Ask.
I'd like to understand too how we leverage technology. I don't know the best way to ask that question. So, and I also don't know, like, in this sector what best practices are. So kind of, because essentially you're decreasing man hours and you're going to eventually be able to leverage that staff for something else. So is there something that someone else is doing that we should be doing? I don't know if.
Can we ask that? Chris Claire won't be there, but do you think we can ask it of Ray?
Well, what I'm
Who's
saying is
coming?
like,
Ray?
we haven't invited anybody yet, because we wanted to.
Oh.
Because we wanna make sure. I
We have
mean,
enough questions. that
We have
are
enough
available for them
questions.
to
I
show
think
up.
that there was sort of a threshold thing of what kind of questions we're gonna come up with and who's the best audience. I mean, so you know, I talked to Andrew about it a little bit, and he said, I'm happy to have the conversation, you know, and then it's really a question of timing, too, of kind of how we want to approach it.
I think
That's
in
not-
part, Bill, that as we ask the questions, maybe there'll be some effect this year, but, I mean, the whole plan, the whole thing, the finance committee over the last 3 years has really developed to like, geez, this is why we're here.
Right.
You know, as opposed to rubber stamping things. And it'd be nice if we happen to have an insight about when the budget comes together and you happen to be comparing departments, you go, well, we get the same position, why can't you? If someone says CBA, okay, I understand it, but at least be able to start questioning and
Yeah.
challenging it, and maybe it won't have effect in 2017, 18, but it maybe will have effect for the following year.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the one thing I want to add, you know, with, you know, if there's no motivation to really, you know, increase your productivity, you know, you always find arguments why you need all these people. You know, what if we ask him, so if you had to reduce your headcount by 30%, what would you do? And it's not just, okay, we'll take 30% out of each department, it's now,
Right.
okay,
It's
how would you
excellent.
reorganize?
I
how
don't
would
ask that one.
No,
It's an excellent exercise.
It's an exercise.
Yes,
you know?
I understand
How would you
exactly.
now
No.
combine departments?
Emergency
Do you
planning.
need
Yeah.
a director for the elderly, for the, I don't even know if there is a director for elderly.
There is.
So
Yeah.
how many, you know, separate departments, would you combine them, and suddenly, you know,
Yeah, I've got
you
those,
stack
yeah.
them up, and so you're smart about 30% and not just taking out 30% across the board.
Yes.
Because they are service related,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
police, fire,
Yeah.
you know, I'm sure there's some established ratios, how many policemen you
Yeah.
need for a town with this size, and I don't know how many
Which is gonna
streets.
refer to as what are other towns doing, or how do we stack up? Yeah.
So it's more like a, you know, more like a thought exercise
Yeah.
than
How do
just
you,
listening to everybody about how they need.
I don't know how to rate that one.
Right.
Without
Well, what-
putting
what-
everyone's guard up.
What if 2007 happened again?
Yeah.
That's basically the question. What if 2007, 2008 happened again? How would you respond, knowing that there'd be severe constraints on revenue impacting personnel, right? So that,
Yeah, and,
emergency planning.
and it's not something you wanna do, you know, okay, we'll have to do it next year. But if you go, you know, you have a long-term plan, so it makes, you know, it's, you know, just cut people, so, okay, you have this idea, and that's maybe a good idea, but let's implement it over the next 10 years. As people retire or you know.
It's a tool.
Change.
Yeah.
It's a method of thinking that says, if I had to, as you said, reduce it by 30%, who would I keep and who would I have to let go? And it isn't that you're gonna let anyone go. The
Right.
numbers, you may just be shifting it around. Again, I'll say to help Dr. Price and the school department. Just, I like what you said.
So the, just to, because you touched on it for a second, Jen, was did Karen go to a conference last year with Ray?
The
and
state.
The state, right, and they started to produce spreadsheets just sort of on norms and
Mhm.
stuff, because that was the investigation that Karen started, I'm sorry, Liz started, you remember, and she came back and said, there's no sort of set ratios, couldn't find anything, and then about 3 or 4 months later,
She
so.
had like a chart. I
Try to
remember
spread
she
it, so just,
printed.
let's follow up with Karen and see if she can dig that out, or if that's been, updated. That was sort of, and I remember Andrew saying, well, not all towns are typical, like Chris was saying, but to the exercise, in both directions, it's kind of nice to have that, 3 data points now.
Mhm.
Where would we want to be in 10 years? What if 2007, 2008 happened? And how do you look at it relative to other communities? So you got 3 to help dress it, which I think helps us be able to go long-term and say, all right, as your FinCom, we've kind of run the exercises 3 ways, right? It's like planning for next year, right? Level, up, down.
Yeah.
You feel like you've done your job. In terms of personnel, is that?
That is comprehensive.
Absolutely.
725.
Where I lived in Virginia, Northern Virginia, and their police is not at the city level, it's at the county level. And it's the Fairfax County Police.
Yeah.
Just an example, they were talking lots of people.
You know, what's the impact of surveillance? Increasing surveillance. I mean, you see now
Mhm.
cameras really at every single corner.
Oh,
Mhm.
sure.
Do you need actually people cruising around? Or you're just watching the screens?
Well, that's like emergency services, right?
Plus,
So they,
all you can actually, through cameras, this is face recognition, everything. You sit in it's not just only looking at a picture. You get all that information, nowadays through all these technology, So
Yeah.
you know what's happening in your town. So
I agree.
I just think it's
we have to be
important for us.
careful with the police.
It's making me paranoid now.
Tickets now.
Everybody get a ticket on the way home. I think we just have to communicate that we're not, I would just say you should be cutting staff. We're talking about
Foresee.
responsibility, I know Angela, I was gonna. It's about more the fiscal responsibility of thinking about staff in the big picture.
yeah,
And I think we have to preface whatever
Yeah.
set of questions we ask with that.
that's why we have gold started out.
Yeah, I know.
So-
You better-
He's sort of the
If we're
opener.
doing this meeting, you
He's sort of
cannot
the
not be
opener.
there.
Yeah.
I'm not
Bill said
doing
what?
that.
Yeah, but in that an open position is not automatically will be filled. Okay, have you at least
No,
thought
go
about?
back to the plan of
you
the
know,
strategy
Can
and.
you actually
Yes.
you know, arrange stuff before you
Right.
fill.
The roles and
the
responsibilities
position.
shifting.
Right.
It's not about
Exactly.
firing somebody, it's just to be
Exactly.
actually going forward. And then
Right.
over time, if, you know, a director leaves, so it's
Mhm.
not automatically it's gonna be replaced, but okay, let's just sit down for a day or two and
Yep.
see if we can reorganize stuff.
Well, it's also
Well-
part of the collective bargaining piece, you know, so I had the opportunity to sit in, do negotiations with the teachers. And so there are two contracts, and one of the things you could see is there are all these pieces that ultimately relate to the number of positions, or how people are compensated, or level of compensation. And I think it would be, it would certainly illuminate a little bit of where Dr. Price is going to address that, because there are a lot of those sort of little snarly things in agreements. But if you have, as you say, a comprehensive approach to it, you know, it's those stipend sort of things which sort of, you know, get codified forever, and should be.
It's part of the master plan.
Right. Well, you know,
Yes.
it is, and it takes a long time to unravel those.
Yes.
Because a lot of times it's so much easier just to negotiate, let's just take the contract as it's written and
Mhm.
talk about the percentages and the steps and be
Right.
done, you know? And it takes a lot longer to get into the minutiae because,
So if the charter schools come in future in this town, that means that we will save on budget, because pensions, we'll save on pensions, right?
We lose
no, so
reimbursements
we
from public
don't,
schools.
we don't really, the public school pensions are entirely kind of not our problem. And basically, there's a Mass State teachers retirement system. The you know, the healthcare is a different story, but the actual pension that the teachers fund, it's not incredibly well funded, but it's decently well funded, and the teachers contribute about you know, the new teachers now are contributing at least 13, sometimes more as they make more money to the pension system.
before.
So we don't really have to worry about that.
Okay.
We do have to worry about the Essex retirement thing, because the state basically the state owns the teachers' fund. So they work it out at the state level under state law, and they would kind of be on the hook if that went bust. The Essex retirement system, which we're a part of, that affects us because we get assessed every year, and that assessment's go, you know, we talked about that a lot last year, because that assessment's going up a lot because the pension fund is not fully funded.
But the assumption is if the charter schools got funded, that doesn't necessarily mean headcount goes down in our town, in the public schools. It's not a direct correlation.
No, it's not direct, but I was talking about the employees of the school, charter schools. And
But
the-
the-
Oh, would that be an extra cost to us?
It shouldn't be an extra cost.
No.
No, we just send the money,
Yeah.
but,
Send them money.
but the big money part of it is if the money leaves, but the infrastructure, like for example, you know, the complaint of Boston and those other places are, the money leaves, but the infrastructure's still there. So you still have 10 schools, and you have to keep the lights on and clean and so forth.
Yep.
So you have fewer bodies, just put it most coldly,
Right.
fewer bodies to spread the expense over, so it becomes more expensive incrementally.
Yeah.
Not we have other
Right.
more immediate. Is there anything else sort of personnel, just, you know, trying to think about, you know, all of us individually, you know, in the companies that we work for, own, whatever, that, you know, if you can you translate to anything as a town, stuff that you deal with every day?
What is the HR planning? An example maybe is that I know the average age of workers comes into play, and you actually stratify those ages so you know when people are retiring and when you need to hire new people. It goes into the planning, you know, and you get certain people at a certain age, this is mine, and, you know, it's like, okay, can we, I hate to say it, but the question does pop up, can you do that same position with less, for a lesser price? And sometimes the answer is yes, but there is all part of HR headcount planning.
Well, the other part of that actually, which sparks my thought, is just outsourcing. So, you know, my industry had their national conference last week. And really stunning how quickly it's moving to taking all these functions that you would normally have one person doing. And they've created 3 jobs out of that are outsourced. And the press is that cheaper to do? So maybe one of the questions here is, talk to us a little bit about our approach with outsourcing.
Yeah.
You know, good, bad, or indifferent, what's our town orientation towards this?
Like we talked about the attorneys last year and insourcing,
There you
as
go,
I call it, right?
that sort of thing, right? We're already kind of on that trail already.
Right.
Yep.
No, I agree with you. My firm is the outsource. That's where the people outsource their work to us. So we-
God, I'm an outsourcer,
That's
so,
right, that's what I'm
yeah.
saying. You know, we're all at different sides of the table now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great question.
So you're building an industry here, outsourcing municipal accounting.
Yeah.
Somebody somewhere
It's being done in
is
other
thinking
industries.
about, you know,
Yeah.
why does that have to sit in your community? What functions could be, I mean, you're having x-rays read in hospitals, not by doctors anymore, in a lot of hospitals, the
Sure.
first read.
Can we talk about who might be the attendees for this? I mean, we'll have this on the docket for 2 weeks from
Well,
now, in theory, right?
let's just, I mean, I think we just gotta take it easy and.
That's what I'm saying, do we even
I'm
have a
fine with,
meeting?
no, what I'm saying is, yeah, it's not enough time for us to convene like 3 or 4 major people who are majorly busy. I think we set the table with some questions, and then we kind of figure out what we wanna do. I mean, certainly we could, you know, have Andrew come to a meeting off-cycle, and he volunteered to come, and we could, you know, have Dr. Price come. I just think we need to give, you know, a little notice and kind of think it through. I think that's what we wanna do is, or if it's just something that we send out in advance of the budgeting process and say, you know, because let's be honest, nothing we say in November is gonna affect how they put together their budgets.
Yep.
Like,
No, this is more learning for us, so we
Right.
don't have to ask it while we're being presented.
Right.
And
But this meeting
Long-term.
is set for the 15th. I just,
I know, but
we
what I'm
need
saying
another
is,
agenda.
yeah, what I'm saying is we could, you know, we have choices to make on the meeting on the 15th. If we wanted to start the conversation with Andrew and invite somebody else as well from the school department as well, you know, I'm happy to do that. I
would
think
Jim be a good person to invite?
I don't,
I don't know if we're ready for these questions.
and I don't, and
It's-
I'm not sure that Jim actually, I don't know, you might know, but does Jim do the negotiating? And then the HR person,
Yeah, I mean.
3 months on the job?
No.
Yeah, the superintendent's
Oh.
usually the one that's directly involved in negotiations. Maybe one of the ways to answer this question is to think about what's the output from all of this.
Right.
To me, the output is, well, yes, we gain this knowledge, but to me, this fits in a little bit with our letter, right? Which says, we've looked at these policies and today and going forward, these are sort of accounted for and considered. So if you think, if that's the output of this, now I'm just kind
No,
of
that's-
riding down the
Yeah.
trail
That's
here.
cool.
If that's the output of this, then what we really need is not as much the department heads, but the people who really shape the philosophy and the drive of that, which
Right.
is gonna be Andrew and probably Dr. Price,
Mhm.
right? Because we're really, maybe Ray, because he's, you know,
He does a lot of
he's got really
yeah.
hands-on.
But that's the implementer,
But
that's
that,
not the,
those are the people who are
visionary.
gonna be able to give you the answers, because that's what we're trying to relay to the citizenry.
Right.
Right.
Well said.
and if it's them, 15th is too soon, in my feeling.
Yeah.
Unless you think you can spin that.
No, I think it's, I mean, it's, well, let's just face it, it's been a really busy month for the town.
Yeah,
You know, we got early voting and move town hall and, you know, and Wednesday night, they're going over the data from the, you know, from
that's what I'm
MCAS.
saying.
So it isn't, you know, not that there's ever a great time, but it's, you know, it's not a good time.
Okay.
But we could ask for a few weeks out.
Well, we
could
have
ask for
one. Oh,
December.
we don't have the 29th.
December 1.
Oh, we have the 29th of November, we have it open, we don't have a booking.
Oh, you have November 15th.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
know,
but we're
that's what
saying we're not ready
We're
to
not
do this
ready
on
to-
November 15th, nor invite the people, so we may or may not have that meeting if we don't have another set of stuff to cover.
Right.
When would be the next time, would be November 29th.
Yeah, and then we're scheduled
we're
the
scheduled
6th.
for the sixth, that's what I'm trying to be, so
Yeah,
should we
'cause-
just aim for the sixth?
I think that might make sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe you can combine, now, the only thing I'm thinking about is just, is there any way to combine that with anything else, so, you know, we'll
Well,
reduce the
Andrew will
yo-yo.
have done the 5-year forecast
Okay.
by then, right? So when's the,
Going back, I know.
I'm sorry.
That
I
might
only
bring up
have
other
the
questions
selectmen
too,
meeting.
so it might
Right.
make sense to have it after that.
November
Yeah, see.
28th.
So
This is where I
maybe
got
if
it.
he did, if he came in on the 1st, does the 5-year forecast and gives us the little HR piece,
Right,
then you get kind of two for that.
The 6th or the?
so wait a minute,
On
so
the
you're saying,
first.
well,
The 1st of,
December, right?
no, okay, here's the choices.
Or 20.
November 29th, which is the
29th,
day
okay.
after this date here,
Yeah,
that says he'll
sorry.
be ready with the 5-year,
Yeah?
and he presents this to the selectmen, so I thought we were gonna go to
yeah,
that
we're
meeting.
gonna try to go to that
guys.
meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, and I invited you guys, so
Right.
then, so November 28th, we're gonna go to the selectmen meeting.
Yeah.
And then the following Tuesday is when maybe we would have Andrew and Chris come in, we can ask questions of what we learned on the selectmen meeting the week before, and we can do the staffing.
Yeah.
Did we just all get that? Yeah.
So will we have the meeting the 15th?
Yeah, and these are already on
So I
the
think
calendar, so I'm gonna.
what we do is just
Special.
cancel the 15th. and go to
Thank
the
you,
6th.
that's, unless we have something else that I can't.
Yeah, no, and I don't think, we don't really, because we're waiting for the revenue.
Hopefully I'll have all my minutes ready for you.
Sure, no problem, no
I
problem.
feel so bad
It's all right.
because
It's
I
been
know
a-
I'm so
It's been a
delayed.
busy month.
All right, so.
I will update
Cancel.
this on the Google Calendar, guys, you don't have to do anything, I'll send you the cancellation.
Thank you.
Except for
Uh.
Chris, who didn't respond. You did not respond. You did not respond, and Angela didn't.
Getting called out.
Angela, after the 6th, you're on. After December 6th, I'm off the calendar duty.
Okay.
And you can manage,
Okay,
but up until then, I've got it all
I
set.
think I already.
Did- I don't know.
I don't have you accepting.
I
No,
respond
I
to
know, but I
everything
put
saw.
December
Yeah.
6th from before.
I know
Yeah.
you did.
Right, and I
Yes.
even I booked a room, I think
Okay.
that's
Yes.
senior center, right?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's,
What
I
is,
see it.
what are the rules on having our meetings the same day as other groups?
Like tonight with this one.
There's no,
Or like the zoning board is also tonight?
there's no,
I did not respond to
No.
all.
The
I respond to
thing
everything.
that
I
challenged
did not
us
respond to all.
initially was the video. And getting a place where there was video, it doesn't seem to be a problem much anymore. So.
It's
And
not
the other
North Andover,
hang up is
Mass.
the
We will.
Board of
We don't
Selectmen
have that
usually meets on
phone.
Mondays.
Yeah, I don't have
That's
it,
pushed to
but-
We gotta get on
Tuesdays,
the
and
phone.
usually we
That's
don't
what I was
overlap, so
asking.
that's
Is
the
there
other
another
thing
meeting
that's
on?
sort of.
But so,
After today.
when does school committee meet? Do they meet on
Thursday.
Thursday?
Yeah, and I'm trying to update
Zoning
the Google
is always on
Calendar that you guys
Tuesdays.
are all on,
I
so
don't
you
know
can look
theirs.
at
They,
it.
so they're always on, my husband's from
Moving
CBA,
stuff
that's
around.
why I'm like,
Okay.
they're always on Tuesdays, we have to
Okay.
get picture. And then on,
You need to go.
um,
You're late.
See,
Oh, shoot, yeah, okay. You keep talking. Okay.
yeah, no, I'm sorry, I am gonna,
Go.
I'm gonna leave, but you guys can keep meeting.
Thank you, you're so kind.
Thank
minimize
you.
yourselves.
And the vice chair can,
What I need to do, and I'm saying this on the record, is I need to update the
Thank you.
I'm not gonna say it,
No.
right, so,
I'll
so,
stop it,
for
I'll
the
see you at
select
voting
meetings
meeting.
and for the school
Okay.
meetings. I just got on the Google Calendar and figured out how we're gonna do this.
okay.
So I didn't wanna make a mess of it for Chris and Angela, but I will put those on. I just have to look on their websites and find every meeting date
No,
and
not
stuff.
that it really, I mean,
No,
matters, but for
we all
other.
kinda care, and I wanna do is update and put what the agenda is, but they're not posting it till literally right before their meeting,
So we don't know.
so kinda don't know. There's a few, like, big meetings, but
Right.
even then, I don't know exactly which date they're gonna present these items.
Right, okay.
It's really real.
Cause then we can coordinate
Yeah.
around that and go to the applicable.
And
meetings.
for Sasha, you too, you should have the email on your phone at the very least. I know you probably have tons of
Yeah.
email boxes for work, but so then you can at least accept and they'll go onto your master calendar on your phones or something, cause otherwise, I don't know how you're gonna handle it.
I get her emails, I never got yours. For
They're
some reason.
appointment invites, they're not emails.
Yeah, but I didn't get that, I don't know for some reason.
Okay, let me try to resend too.
Yeah.
Okay?
did you get my attachments when I sent them?
Mhm, I do get
Okay,
that.
because I don't get a warm fuzzy feeling when I send them out that everyone gets.
I
Yeah,
respond
no,
to you
you're-
promptly, right?
They always come.
And they're in the
Yes, you
calendar
did,
now.
yes.
Yeah.
I'll reply. Got
No, no, it's okay, I just don't know, because
You
this
just
is all
sent
new.
me
We
the-
used to
Not
do-
yet, I'm
We
working
used
on
to
it.
do it under first class before,
Yeah.
and now it's
Reply all.
changed. takes a lot longer to send one thing out. It's like, well, these steps, I'm going, I hope I'm doing it right.
Well, so this actually kind of ties into, you know, I think we want to keep reminding ourselves to try and get individually and collectively, get to other meetings of, whether it's the school committee, zoning board, you know, all of us kind of commit to try and have some more familiarity with that. Thursday morning, Bill and I are doing the fixed cost, so we're doing our little piece there, but I do think it's really important that we try and get to, you know, one or two of those, at least school committee meetings, if nothing else, if not board of selectmen, just, I think that helps contextually.
We're good, I'm just talking to myself, sorry. Any other questions? 'Cause this was it for the agenda today.
Yeah, so like and is this just so I'm looking at your document, sorry. So, like on December 19th, there's a recommendation for a capital improvements plan to the selectmen, and then we're the next day. And we talked about potentially just going to that meeting, or are we just trying to make it easier for everyone, or we're talking about synergies here.
That's the one that I invited all of you.
On December
19th to the selectmen meeting, yes.
So the 28th and the 19th. Okay.
Yeah, and the idea was that we really aren't, unless you
December?
unless you go into public
December
comment,
19th.
Oh, I am not
You
going
can't
to be there.
really
Okay.
ask questions, so that's where
But still
you,
respond and say
Yeah.
that, so we
we
know.
can't really
Yeah.
have
So
that
we're-
kind of a meeting.
The only way you can do that is you have to go, it's a citizen.
Right, so that's why, but I agree with you, it'd be nice to be able to do that, you know, have joint meetings, but it's just not practical.
Right, makes sense.
Because of the question, the line of questioning.
Question, plus it's
Right.
only one part of their agenda and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
Well, then we're suggesting 2 meetings before year end that
Yeah.
we go, right? We're still good with that?
Yeah, yeah.
The 5-year forecast and the
Yeah.
capital improvement, okay.
At the very least, it shortens if everyone attends, it shortens how Andrew, it allows us perhaps even to come up with questions, prep ourselves with questions when we do meet with Andrew.
Mhm.
Right with you, man.
Okay. I can finish this up after. I'm just adding you guys now to that. Anything else?
No public comment?
No?
No public comment? That guy wasn't here for public comment?
You know, he was not, he was going to the selectmen's meeting.
Oh, you know, because it's in this building too, right?
No,
Oh.
no, it's supposed to be at, the town hall.
Oh, guy.
Yeah.
He's not locked behind the door?
And then
Door
he's gonna go back
shuts.
at 9 and we'll be gone for now.
Yeah.
All right, well then I think we should have a motion to adjourn.
A motion that we adjourn?
Secondly?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Well done.